The morning sun crept over the Arizona hills like a thief, painting the desert in shades of gold and rust. Sarah Mackenzie stood at the well behind her family's homestead, drawing water for the day's washing. The rope burned her palms as she hauled up the bucket, but she'd grown used to such small pains in the 3 years since her husband Thomas had brought them west from Missouri. The air tasted of dust and sage, carrying the distant lowing of cattle from the Hendersons' ranch a mile north. Sarah paused to wipe sweat from her brow, her calico dress already damp despite the early hour. September in Apache territory was unforgiving, the heat pressing down like an iron even before the sun reached its peak. "Sarah," Thomas called from the house. "Coffee's ready." She smiled, lifting the heavy bucket. Thomas was a good man, steady and reliable, though their marriage held more companionship than passion. Out here, that was enough. Love was a luxury few could afford when survival demanded every ounce of strength. The first arrow struck the water bucket, sending it spinning from her hands. Sarah's scream caught in her throat as dark figures erupted from the mesquite brush Apache warriors, their faces painted for war, moving with terrible swiftness toward the homestead. "Thomas!" This time her cry rang out sharp and clear. "Apache!" The door burst open. Thomas emerged with his rifle, but there were too many. Sarah watched in horror as an arrow found his shoulder, spinning him against the doorframe. His shot went wide, and then they were upon him. "Run, Sarah." His final words were lost in the chaos of war cries and gunfire. But there was nowhere to run. The warriors moved like shadows given form, surrounding the homestead with practiced efficiency. Sarah grabbed the pistol Thomas kept beneath the rain barrel, her hands shaking as she raised it. The weight felt foreign, wrong. She'd fired it only once. At Tin Cans, Thomas had lined up for practice. A warrior emerged from her left, tall, lean, his face a mask of red and black paint. Sarah swung the pistol toward him, but he moved faster than thought. His hand closed over hers, crushing her fingers until the weapon fell. When she tried to scream, another hand clamped over her mouth. The smell of smoke reached her as flames began licking at the homestead's walls. Through tears, she saw Thomas's still form in the doorway. The Hendersons' ranch was too far, no help would come. The warriors were already loading what they could carry: grain sacks, tools, anything of value. The warrior holding her said something in Apache to another man, who nodded and brought a length of rawhide. They bound her wrists with efficiency born of long practice. When she struggled, the tall warrior's grip tightened, not cruel, but implacable as stone. More captives were being herded together: Mary Henderson and her teenage daughter Emma, the Mexican women who worked at the trading post. Sarah counted 7 prisoners, all women. The men. She forced herself not to think of the men. The tall warrior pulled her toward the horses. Up close, she could see past the war paint to the man beneath, perhaps 30 summers, with intelligent eyes the color of dark honey and scars that spoke of many battles. He lifted her onto a paint mare as if she weighed nothing, then vaulted up behind her. His chest pressed against her back as he reached around her for the reins. Sarah wanted to recoil, to fight, but exhaustion and shock were setting in. The homestead she'd worked so hard to make beautiful was now a pillar of black smoke against the morning sky. Everything she'd known, everything she'd built with Thomas, gone in moments. The war party moved out at a steady pace, heading south into the mountains. The tall warrior's arm circled her waist, keeping her secure on the horse. He smelled of wood smoke and something else: wild sage, perhaps, or juniper, so different from Thomas's familiar scent of tobacco and leather. They rode in silence, broken only by the quiet sobbing of Emma Henderson and the rhythmic beat of hooves on stone. The sun climbed higher, baking the desert floor until heat shimmers danced like spirits. Sarah's throat burned with thirst, but she wouldn't give these savages the satisfaction of begging. At midday, they stopped by a hidden spring. The warriors dismounted, careful with their captives. The tall one lifted Sarah down, his hand surprisingly gentle. When he offered her a water gourd, she wanted to refuse, but her body's needs won. The water was warm, tasting of leather, but she'd never been more grateful for a drink. "Grey Wolf," one of the warriors called in accented English, gesturing to the tall warrior. "The white woman, she is yours." So he had a name. Grey Wolf looked at Sarah with those unsettling amber eyes, then nodded once. "She is under my protection." The words sent ice through her veins. Protection. She knew what that meant among the Apache. She'd heard the stories at the trading post, whispered tales of white women taken as slaves, or worse. Sarah's hands clenched into fists, the rawhide cutting into her wrists. They rode through the afternoon into country Sarah had never seen. The familiar desert gave way to pine forests and red rock canyons. The beauty of it mocked her grief. How could the world remain so stunning when hers had ended? As shadows lengthened, they climbed a narrow trail between towering cliffs. Sarah caught glimpses of sentries among the rocks, Apache warriors who called out greetings to the returning war party. Children appeared from nowhere, running alongside the horses, their voices high with excitement. The Apache camp spread across a valley floor, perhaps 50 wickiups arranged in family groups. Cook fires sent smoke spiraling into the evening sky. Women looked up from their work, their expressions hardening as they saw the captives. Grey Wolf dismounted and lifted Sarah down. This time she did struggle, earning sharp words from him in Apache. He gripped her arm, not painfully, but with clear warning, and led her through the camp. They stopped before a wickiup larger than most. A woman emerged, and Sarah's breath caught. She was beautiful in the way of a hawk, fierce, proud, with sharp cheekbones and eyes like obsidian. Those eyes fixed on Sarah with immediate hostility. Grey Wolf spoke in Apache, his tone neutral. The woman, clearly his wife, responded with rapid-fire words that needed no translation. Her gestures toward Sarah were violent, accusatory. Grey Wolf's responses grew shorter, more clipped. Finally, he cut her off with a single harsh word. The woman's face flushed with rage. She spat at Sarah's feet before storming back into the wickiup. Grey Wolf led Sarah to a smaller dwelling nearby. Inside, buffalo robes covered the floor, and baskets lined the walls. He cut her bonds with a knife that appeared and disappeared so quickly Sarah barely saw it. "You stay here," he said in careful English. "Do not try to run. The desert will kill you faster than my people." Sarah rubbed her raw wrists, finding her voice at last. "What do you want with me?" He studied her for a long moment. "You are my captive. You will work. You will obey. Do this, and you will live. And if I don't," his expression didn't change, "then you will not." He left her there, dropping the entrance flap behind him. Sarah sank onto the buffalo robes, finally allowing the tears to come. Outside, she could hear the camp settling into evening routines, children being called to supper, dogs barking, the normal sounds of life continuing. But nothing would ever be normal again. Thomas was dead. Her home was ashes. She was a prisoner of the Apache, property of a warrior whose wife already hated her. The pistol had failed her. Escape was impossible, and all that remained was to survive however she could. As darkness fell over the camp, Sarah Mackenzie curled into herself and wept for the life that had ended with the morning sun. Tomorrow, she would have to learn to live as a captive. Tonight, she mourned the woman she had been, the frontier wife who had believed hard work and determination were enough to build a life in this unforgiving land. The sounds of the Apache camp gradually faded as exhaustion claimed her. Her last thought before sleep was a prayer not for rescue, which seemed impossible now, but for strength. She would need all she could find in the days to come. The first days blurred together like a fever dream. Sarah woke each dawn to the sound of camp dogs barking and women beginning their morning tasks. Through the wickiup smoke hole, she watched stars fade into the pale blue of desert morning, wondering if anyone from the settlements was searching for survivors. Grey Wolf came for her on the third day. His wife Sarah had learned her name was Morningstar watched from their wickiup entrance, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Grey Wolf ignored her, gesturing for Sarah to follow. The camp sprawled larger than Sarah had first realized. Family groups clustered together, with the eldest women holding court outside their dwellings. Children ran everywhere, pausing to stare at the white captive with curious eyes. Some of the bolder ones called out words Sarah didn't understand, though their mocking tone needed no translation. Grey Wolf led her to where the other captives were gathered. Mary Henderson looked haggard, her dress torn and dirty. Young Emma clung to her mother's arm, eyes red from crying. The Mexican women sat apart, having already learned the rhythms of captivity from generations of border raids. An elderly Apache woman approached, her face weathered as ancient leather. She spoke rapidly to Grey Wolf, gesturing at the captives. He nodded, then turned to Sarah. "You will work with the others," he said. "Singing Crow will teach you. Obey her." The work was grinding, hauling water from the creek, gathering firewood, scraping hides. Sarah's soft hands blistered within hours. When she paused to rest, Singing Crow would bark sharp words and gesture for her to continue. The old woman wasn't cruel, merely practical. There was no room for weakness in Apache life. At midday, they were given a handful of pine nuts and dried meat. Sarah's stomach cramped with hunger, but she forced herself to eat slowly. Emma Henderson wolfed hers down and promptly vomited. One of the Mexican women, Rosa, helped the girl clean herself, whispering soothing words in Spanish. The afternoon brought a commotion. A hunting party returned with 2 deer slung over pack horses. The women rushed forward to begin butchering, and Sarah found herself pressed into service. The smell of blood made her gag, but Singing Crow showed no patience for squeamishness. Grey Wolf appeared as Sarah struggled with a skinning knife, without a word. He took the blade from her clumsy hands and demonstrated the proper technique, one smooth motion separating hide from flesh. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, and, despite herself, Sarah found her attention caught by their graceful strength. "Like this," he said, handing back the knife. "Cut away from the body. Let the blade do the work." Their fingers brushed in the exchange. Sarah jerked back as if burned, earning a slight frown from him. He watched her attempt the technique, then nodded approval when she managed a clean stroke. "Better, you learn." As he turned to go, Morningstar materialized at his side. Her words were low and venomous, her gestures including both Sarah and Grey Wolf. He responded calmly at first, then with increasing sharpness. Their argument drew attention from others nearby, women pausing in their work to watch. Finally, Grey Wolf said something that made Morningstar's face contort with rage. She raised her hand as if to strike him, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, she spat a final curse and stalked away. Grey Wolf watched her go, his expression unreadable, before disappearing among the wickiups. "You bring trouble," Rosa murmured to Sarah in accented English. "His woman. She sees how he looks at you." "I haven't encouraged anything," Sarah protested. Rosa gave her a pitying look. "It doesn't matter. A man's eyes go where they will. And that one, his eyes follow you." Sarah wanted to deny it, but she'd noticed too, the way Grey Wolf would appear when the work was hardest, ostensibly checking on all the captives but lingering near her. How he'd positioned her wickiup where he could see it from his own entrance. Small things. But in the close confines of the camp, nothing went unnoticed. That evening, the captives were allowed to bathe in the creek under guard. The water was shockingly cold, but Sarah welcomed the chance to wash away days of dirt and fear. She helped Emma with her hair, the simple act of caring for another human bringing unexpected comfort. On the bank, their Apache guards chatted among themselves. One was weaving a basket, her fingers flying in intricate patterns. Despite everything, Sarah found herself fascinated by the skill involved. When the woman noticed her watching, she expected anger. Instead, the guard held up the basket, showing how the willow strands interlocked. Walking back to camp in the dying light, Sarah noticed Grey Wolf standing with a group of warriors. They were examining horses, discussing something with animated gestures. He glanced up as the captives passed, his gaze finding Sarah immediately. She looked away, but not before catching Morningstar watching from across the camp, her face dark with suspicion. That night, exhaustion pulled Sarah toward sleep despite the strange sounds of the Apache camp. Dogs barked at shadows. Somewhere, a baby cried and was quickly soothed. Men's voices rose and fell around a distant fire, punctuated by occasional laughter. She dreamed of Thomas, saw him standing in their doorway calling her to coffee, but when she reached for him, he dissolved like smoke, leaving only the smell of burning wood and the echo of war cries. Sarah woke to find someone in her wickiup. She bit back a scream, recognizing Grey Wolf's silhouette in the darkness. He held a finger to his lips, then set something beside her sleeping robes, a pair of moccasins and what looked like deer-hide clothing. "Your dress," he whispered. "It will not last. These are better for work." Before she could respond, he was gone, moving silent as a shadow. Sarah touched the soft hide, confused by this unexpected kindness. The moccasins were decorated with simple beadwork, clearly women's wear but serviceable rather than fancy. In the morning, she understood why he'd come at night. When she emerged wearing the Apache clothing, Morningstar's reaction was volcanic. She shrieked at Grey Wolf, gesturing wildly at Sarah's transformed appearance. Other women gathered, some supporting Morningstar with sharp words of their own. Grey Wolf stood like a rock in the storm, letting his wife's fury break over him without response. When she finally paused for breath, he spoke quietly but firmly. Whatever he said made several of the watching women gasp. Morningstar's face went pale, then flushed dark red. She turned on her heel and vanished into their wickiup, slamming the entrance flap behind her. The camp buzzed with gossip all day. Sarah caught the other captives looking at her strangely. Even Singing Crow seemed more distant, though she continued teaching Sarah the endless tasks of Apache women's work. "What did I do?" Sarah asked Rosa during their midday rest. "You exist," Rosa replied simply. "And worse, you make him remember kindness. This is dangerous for everyone." As the sun set behind the western peaks, Sarah stood outside her wickiup watching the camp settle into evening routines. The deer-hide dress felt strange against her skin, foreign yet oddly comfortable. The moccasins had saved her feet from sharp stones and thorns during the day's foraging. She thought of Thomas, tried to summon grief, but found only a hollow ache. Was she already forgetting? The idea terrified her. If she lost her memories, what would be left of the woman she'd been? Grey Wolf appeared beside her so quietly she gasped. He studied her for a moment, then nodded approval at how the clothing fit. "Tomorrow, you learn to gather mesquite beans," he said. "The women go early, before the heat." "Why are you helping me?" The question escaped before Sarah could stop it. He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Finally," he said. "My grandmother was Mexican, taken in a raid when she was young. A warrior showed her kindness, and she survived to become Apache. She told me once that captivity is like drowning. A small kindness can be the breath that keeps someone alive long enough to find their strength." "Your wife doesn't share that view." His jaw tightened. "Morningstar sees only what she fears to lose, but fear makes people cruel. I will not be cruel because my wife is afraid." He left her standing there, wrestling with emotions she couldn't name. Gratitude. It seemed wrong to feel grateful to her captor, but in this harsh new world, his protection might be the only thing standing between her and worse fates. That night, Sarah lay on her buffalo robe staring up at stars visible through the smoke hole. Somewhere in the darkness, a flute played a melody that spoke of loneliness and longing. She thought of Grey Wolf's words about drowning and kindness, wondering if accepting his help meant losing herself or finding a way to survive. The flute played on, its notes carrying across the camp like a lament for all the lives torn apart by the endless warfare between Apache and white settlers. Sarah closed her eyes and let the music wash over her. Not yet Apache, but no longer the frontier wife she'd been. Something in between, learning to breathe in a world that wanted to drown her. The rains came in October, transforming the desert into a brief paradise of blooming cacti and running streams. Sarah had been with the Apache for 6 weeks now, long enough to understand the rhythms of camp life. Though she remained forever on its margins, neither fully prisoner nor accepted member, her wickiup had become a strange sort of refuge. Grey Wolf had gradually furnished it with necessities: thick buffalo robes for the cooling nights, baskets for storing the mesquite flour she'd learned to grind, a water gourd that didn't leak. Each gift appeared without ceremony, left while she worked or slept. But the camp noticed everything. Morningstar's hatred had evolved from hot fury to cold calculation. She no longer screamed or made scenes. Instead, she watched and waited, her dark eyes following Sarah's every movement with predatory patience. The tension came to a head during the communal evening meal. Sarah sat with the other captives near the cooking fires, accepting her portion of venison stew from Singing Crow. The old woman had warmed to her somewhat, occasionally offering gruff praise when Sarah mastered a new skill. Morningstar approached with deliberate steps, carrying her own bowl. As she passed Sarah, her foot caught the edge of Sarah's bowl, sending hot stew across Sarah's lap. The burning liquid soaked through the deer-hide dress, scalding her thighs. Sarah gasped, but didn't cry out, having learned that showing weakness invited more torment. She reached for a cloth to clean herself, but Morningstar's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. "Clumsy white woman," Morningstar said in accented English, loud enough for all to hear. "You soil the clothes my husband gave you. Perhaps you should eat with the dogs." The camp fell silent. Even the children stopped their play to watch. Sarah felt the weight of dozens of eyes, some sympathetic, most merely curious to see how the drama would unfold. Grey Wolf materialized from the shadows between wickiups. His expression was carved from stone, but Sarah had learned to read the subtle tension in his shoulders, the way his hand rested near his knife. "Release her," he said quietly in Apache. Morningstar's grip tightened. "She is a captive. I am your wife. Will you shame me before our people for this pale stranger?" "You shame yourself with this behavior. Release her." The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Morningstar held on a moment longer, her nails digging into Sarah's skin, then abruptly let go. She straightened, addressing the watching crowd. "See how he protects her, how he forgets his duties to his own family. This white woman has bewitched him." Murmurs rippled through the gathered Apache. Some of the elder women shook their heads, whether in disapproval of Morningstar's accusations or Grey Wolf's behavior. Sarah couldn't tell. Grey Wolf stepped between his wife and Sarah. "Go to our wickiup, Morningstar. We will speak privately." "No!" Her voice rose to a shriek. "Let everyone see what you have become. You give her gifts. You watch her constantly. You—" "Enough!" The word cracked like a whip. Grey Wolf's control finally slipped, revealing the warrior beneath. "You dishonor yourself and me with these displays. Go, now!" Morningstar's face contorted with rage and humiliation. She threw her bowl at Grey Wolf's feet, splattering stew across his moccasins, then fled toward their dwelling. Several women hurried after her, whether to comfort or restrain. Sarah wasn't sure. Grey Wolf turned to Sarah, switching to English. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, though her thighs still burned from the hot liquid. "I'm fine. Come, I will get medicine for the burns." "No." The refusal came out sharper than intended. Sarah softened her tone. "That will only make things worse. I can tend to myself." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded, "As you wish," as he walked away. Sarah became aware of the speculative looks from the other Apache. Some held sympathy, others suspicion. A few of the younger warriors watched Grey Wolf go with expressions that worried her. Dissension in a leader's household could spread like wildfire. Rosa leaned close. You should be careful. Sarah, a jealous wife is dangerous, but a warrior who loses face before his people, that can be deadly. That night, Sarah lay awake listening to raised voices from Grey Wolf's wickiup. She couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear accusations, denials, threats. Other families tried to go about their evening routines, but the argument drew furtive glances and hushed conversations. Near midnight, silence finally fell. Sarah had just begun to doze when her wickiup flap lifted. She tensed, expecting Morningstar with a knife, but it was Grey Wolf who entered. In the moonlight filtering through the smoke hole, she could see a fresh cut on his cheek. She attacked you, Sarah whispered. He touched the wound absently. She is angry, it will pass. Will it? The whole camp is talking. Your warriors question your judgment, and your wife is my concern, not yours. He moved closer, and Sarah could smell the sage smoke that clung to his hair. I came to warn you. Do not go anywhere alone for the next few days. Morningstar has cousins who share her anger. Then send me away. Trade me to another band or ransom me back to the settlements. End this before... No. The word was soft but final. You are under my protection. I do not abandon those under my protection. Why? Sarah found herself moving closer despite every rational thought screaming danger. Why do you risk so much for a captive? I'm nothing to you. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. My grandmother told me that kindness costs nothing but can mean everything. You remind me of her stories, how frightened she was, how alone. I could not save her from that fear. She died before I was old enough to understand. But perhaps... He didn't finish, but Sarah understood. Perhaps he could save her. Perhaps through her, he could heal some old wound carried from childhood. Your kindness may cost you more than you know, she said softly. Everything has a price. I choose what I am willing to pay. He reached out, his fingers barely grazing her cheek, where tears she hadn't noticed had left tracks. The touch lasted only a heartbeat before he pulled back as if burned. Forgive me. I should not have. He stood abruptly. Bar the entrance tonight. Trust no one who comes in darkness except me. Then he was gone, leaving Sarah with skin that burned where he'd touched her and thoughts that tangled like thorns. She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to force away the memory of his gentleness. This was madness. He was her captor, married to another, from a world that had destroyed her own. But the heart was a traitor that recognized no borders. The next days passed in uneasy tension. Morningstar made no more direct attacks, but her presence loomed like a storm cloud. She stationed herself where she could watch Sarah work, her gaze never wavering. When Sarah went to gather water, Morningstar's cousins appeared, not quite threatening but making their presence known. Grey Wolf kept his distance during daylight, though Sarah sometimes caught him watching from afar. At night, she heard him pacing outside her wickiup like a sentry. The camp noticed. Of course, everything was noticed in the close confines of Apache life. On the fourth night, Sarah was returning from the creek when 3 figures blocked her path. Morningstar stood flanked by 2 younger women, relatives whose names Sarah didn't know. We talk, white woman, Morningstar said. Woman to woman. Sarah's hand tightened on the water gourd. Talk then. You think you are safe because he protects you, but warriors are fickle. When he tires of you, who will stand between you and justice for all the Apache blood your people have spilled? I've spilled no blood. I was a farmer's wife, nothing more. Morningstar laughed bitterly. Your men come with guns and promises. They take our land, kill our game, poison our water. Then they act surprised when we fight back. You are all guilty. Sarah couldn't argue with the truth of it, though she'd never held a weapon until that last terrible morning. What do you want from me? Leave. Tell him you wish to go. I will arrange it traders who will take you north. back to your people. You can live. He can remember his duties. Everyone wins. And if I refuse? Morningstar's smile was sharp as a blade. Then you will learn that Apache women know how to protect what is theirs. My grandmother killed 3 enemies in her lifetime. The blood runs true. The threat hung between them like a drawn bow. Sarah met Morningstar's gaze steadily, drawing on reserves of courage she hadn't known she possessed. I cannot leave. He won't allow it. You know this. Then make him stop caring, turn cold, reject his gifts, show disgust at his touch. Make him believe you hate him. A man's pride will do the rest. Sarah saw the desperate hope beneath Morningstar's threat. This proud woman was begging, in her way, for Sarah to help save her marriage. The realization brought unexpected sympathy. I have encouraged nothing. Your existence encourages him. Your eyes follow him as his follow you. Do you think the camp is blind? Do you think I am? Morningstar's voice cracked slightly. I have been his wife for 7 summers. I know every expression of his face, the way he looks at you. He has never looked at me that way. The pain in those words cut deeper than any threat. Sarah saw not an enemy, but a woman fighting for her love, her position, her very identity. I'm sorry, Sarah said quietly. I never meant... Your intentions matter nothing, only your actions. Choose wisely, white woman. Choose soon. Morningstar swept away, her cousins following like shadows. Sarah stood alone in the darkness, the water gourd heavy in her hands, the weight of impossible choices heavier still on her shoulders. That night, Grey Wolf did not come to check on her. His absence felt like a message, though whether he was heeding his wife's wishes or giving Sarah space to think, she couldn't know. She lay on her buffalo robes, staring at the stars through the smoke hole, trying to find a path through the thorns that wouldn't leave everyone bleeding. But some paths had no safe passage. Some choices only offered different kinds of pain. And in the silence of the Apache night, Sarah began to understand that her captivity was not the only prison in this camp. They were all captives in their way to duty, to tradition, to feelings that refused to obey the boundaries of culture or common sense. The flute player took up his nightly song, the notes carrying across the camp like a lament. Sarah closed her eyes and let the music wash over her, wondering if Morningstar lay awake listening too, and if Grey Wolf stood somewhere between their 2 dwellings, torn between duty and something that had no name in either of their languages. The winter moons brought change to the high desert. Ice glazed the creek each morning, and Sarah learned to break through it with stones to reach the water below. Her hands, once soft from indoor work, had grown calloused and capable. She could now build a fire in minutes, weave baskets tight enough to hold water, and identify which plants would heal and which would harm. Grey Wolf had become her teacher in unexpected ways. After Morningstar's threat, Sarah had tried to maintain distance, but he seemed to sense her fear and responded not by withdrawing, but by drawing her deeper into Apache life. Come, he said one crystalline morning, appearing at her wickiup with 2 fishing spears. The trout gather in the deep pools when ice forms. Sarah hesitated. Accepting would anger Morningstar, but refusing might offend him and lose the protection she desperately needed. Self-preservation won. They walked to the creek in companionable silence, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Grey Wolf moved with the fluid grace of one born to this land, while Sarah had learned to place her feet carefully on the icy stones. At a pool where the water ran deep and dark, he demonstrated the technique standing motionless as a heron, spear poised, waiting for the perfect moment. His strike was swift and sure, bringing up a fat trout that gleamed silver in the morning sun. Your turn, he said, offering her the second spear. Sarah's first attempts were clumsy. The fish scattered at her shadow, and her strikes hit only water. Grey Wolf moved behind her, adjusting her grip, showing her how to angle for the refraction of light. His hands over hers were warm despite the cold, and Sarah found her concentration fracturing. Steady, he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Wait for them to forget you are there. A trout glided into range. Sarah struck, felt the spear connect, and pulled up her first catch with a cry of triumph. Grey Wolf's rare smile transformed his usually stern features. You see, you are becoming Apache. The words should have horrified her. Instead, Sarah felt an unexpected pride. She was surviving, adapting, growing stronger. Was that betrayal of Thomas's memory, or simply the human spirit's refusal to break? They caught several more fish before the sun climbed high enough to send the trout into deeper waters. Walking back, Sarah noticed how natural it felt to match Grey Wolf's pace, how she'd stopped flinching when he moved suddenly. Why do you not hate us? He asked abruptly. Your husband is dead. Your home burned. You should hate. Sarah considered the question. I did hate, at first, but hate is exhausting, and I needed my strength to survive. Besides, she paused, searching for words. You are not the one who killed Thomas. You're just a man trying to protect his people, as he was trying to protect his. We're all captives of this war between our peoples. Grey Wolf stopped walking, studying her with those amber eyes that seemed to see too much. You speak wisdom beyond your years. Suffering ages us quickly. Yes, he agreed quietly. It does. Back at camp, Morningstar waited outside Sarah's wickiup, her face a mask of controlled fury. She held something in her hands, the torn remains of the dress Sarah had arrived in, the last link to her old life. I found this polluting our camp, Morningstar said loudly, ensuring others heard. White people's clothing brings sickness and bad luck. Sarah felt the loss like a physical blow but kept her expression neutral. It was just cloth. Yes, just cloth. Just like you are just a woman. Remember that. The threat was clear. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. Morningstar smiled coldly and walked away, leaving the torn fabric scattered in the dirt. Grey Wolf bent to gather the pieces. She should not have done this. Please, Sarah said quietly. Don't make it worse. She's your wife. She has the right to her anger. Rights and wisdom are not the same thing. But he let the matter drop, handing Sarah the salvaged fabric. Perhaps you can use this for something else. Apache women waste nothing. That afternoon, Singing Crow taught Sarah to make pine pitch glue, showing her how to heat the resin with charcoal and deer fat until it formed a waterproof seal. The old woman worked in silence for a time, then spoke without looking up. You bring trouble to this camp. Sarah's hand stilled. I don't mean to. Intentions are like morning mist, pretty but without substance. Grey Wolf's protection makes you safe but also makes you dangerous. Do you understand? I understand that Morningstar hates me, that others question Grey Wolf's judgment. Singing Crow snorted. You understand the surface, like a child seeing only ripples without knowing the depth of water. This goes beyond one woman's jealousy. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. There are those who say Grey Wolf grows soft, that his heart turns too much toward peace with the whites. They watch how he treats you and see weakness. He's not weak, Sarah said without thinking. The old woman's knowing look made her flush. No, he is not. But perception shapes reality in a camp this small. Young warriors like Running Eagle and Spotted Horse whisper that a true Apache would not coddle an enemy woman. They say Morningstar deserves a husband who honors her properly. Sarah felt cold that had nothing to do with winter air. What should I do? Survive, Singing Crow said simply, but carefully, very carefully. That evening brought the worst storm of the season. Snow fell thick and fast, driven by winds that found every gap in the wickiup's construction. Sarah huddled in her buffalo robes, feeding small sticks to her fire and listening to the storm rage. Near midnight, her entrance flap lifted. Grey Wolf entered, snow dusting his shoulders, carrying an armload of firewood. You'll freeze without more fuel, he said, stacking the wood carefully. You shouldn't be here. The storm provides cover from watching eyes. He sat across the fire from her, steam rising from his wet clothing. Morning star sleeps. She took a tea for her anger that brings deep dreams. They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. Sarah found herself studying his face in the dancing light, the strong plane softened by shadow, the scar along his jaw that spoke of old battles. When had she stopped seeing him as just another Apache warrior? "Tell me about your husband," Grey Wolf said suddenly. The request surprised her. "Why?" "Because he was part of you. To understand you, I must understand what you have lost." Sarah closed her eyes, summoning Thomas's face. He was steady, like a rock in a river, not given to grand gestures or pretty words, but reliable. He worked hard, planned carefully. He wanted to build something lasting on the frontier. "Did you love him?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "I respected him, cared for him. We were partners against the wilderness. Love." She opened her eyes to find Grey Wolf watching intently. "Love was a luxury we couldn't afford. There was too much work, too much danger. We thought there would be time later, when the farm was established, when life was easier." "There is never time later, only now." His words carried weight beyond their simplicity. Sarah felt the space between them shrinking, though neither had moved. "What about you and Morningstar?" she asked, needing to break the spell. "Was your marriage for love?" Grey Wolf's expression grew distant. "For alliance. Her father was a great warrior. Our joining brought two family groups together, made us stronger. She is a good woman, strong and skilled. She deserves better than a husband whose eyes wander." "Then stop them from wandering." He laughed softly, a sound without humor. "Can you stop the wind? Can you tell the rain where to fall? The heart wants what it wants, even when the mind knows better." The truth lay bare between them now, acknowledged if not acted upon. Sarah felt as if she stood on the edge of a cliff, one step from falling. "I should go," Grey Wolf said, but didn't move. "Yes," Sarah agreed, but didn't tell him to leave. The fire burned lower, outside. The storm howled its fury. Inside, two people sat caught between worlds, between duties and desires, between what was safe and what was real. Finally, Grey Wolf rose. At the entrance, he paused. "Tomorrow I teach you to read weather signs, a skill every Apache needs." It was a promise of more time together, disguised as practical instruction. Sarah knew she should refuse. Knew Morningstar's threats were real. Knew the young warriors watched for weakness. "I'll be ready," she heard herself say. After he left, Sarah lay wakeful despite her exhaustion. The torn dress lay in the corner where she'd folded it carefully, planning to weave the fabric into something useful. Apache women waste nothing. After all, like her old life, it would be transformed into something new, something that fit this strange existence she was building. But transformation came with a price. Each skill Grey Wolf taught her. Each day she survived in the Apache world. Each moment of unexpected happiness she found, all of it took her further from the woman who had drawn water from a well on a September morning that seemed a lifetime ago. The storm raged through the night, burying the familiar landscape under pristine white. In the morning, Sarah knew, everything would look different. The metaphor wasn't lost on her. She was changing, shaped by this place and these people in ways she couldn't have imagined. And at the center of that change stood Grey Wolf, teacher, protector, and something else she didn't yet have words for, something that made Morningstar's hatred justified and the young warrior's suspicions valid, something that could destroy them all if she wasn't careful. Singing Crow's words echoed survive, but carefully. Sarah pulled the buffalo robes higher and closed her eyes, listening to the storm. Tomorrow she would learn to read weather signs, but tonight she was learning to read the signs of her own heart, and finding them far more difficult to interpret. The challenge came on a morning when frost painted the desert silver. Sarah was helping Singing Crow prepare medicines when raised voices drew everyone's attention to the center of camp. Running Eagle, a warrior barely past 20 summers, stood facing Grey Wolf with several young men at his back. "You dishonor us all," Running Eagle declared, his voice carrying across the silent camp. "While Apache blood soaks the earth, you coddle a white woman like a treasured wife." Grey Wolf emerged from his wickiup, Morning Star behind him. His face showed no emotion, but Sarah had learned to read the dangerous stillness in his posture. "Speak carefully, young warrior. Your words walk close to insult." "The insult is yours," Running Eagle gestured toward Sarah. "You teach her our ways. Protect her from justice. Look at her with eyes that should be for your wife alone." The people whisper. The elders worry. Even the children ask why the white captive receives better treatment than Apache widows. A crowd gathered, forming a loose circle. Sarah felt their eyes like physical weight. Some faces showed sympathy, others agreement with Running Eagle's words. Morning Star stood rigid, her expression unreadable. "She is my captive," Grey Wolf said evenly. "Mine to protect or punish as I see fit. This has always been our way." "Our way, Spotted Horse," another young warrior, stepped forward. "Our way is to take revenge for our dead. My brother fell to white bullets last spring. His widow grieves while this woman grows fat on our food." "Would killing her bring back your brother?" Grey Wolf's voice remained calm, but Sarah saw his hand shift closer to his knife. "Would torturing a farmer's wife who never held a weapon make our dead rest easier?" "It would show we are still Apache." Running Eagle's passion blazed. Not soft men who forget their people's suffering because of a pretty face. The insult hung in the air like a drawn blade. By Apache custom, Grey Wolf could not let it pass without response. The crowd held its breath. "You question my loyalty to our people." Grey Wolf stepped into the circle, and suddenly he seemed larger, more dangerous. "I, who have led 20 raids, who carry scars from protecting this band. You dare suggest I am less Apache than an untested boy who has yet to face true battle." Running Eagle flushed but held his ground. "Actions speak louder than old victories. Show us you remember who you are. Give the woman to those who lost family to white treachery. Let Apache justice be done." Or, the single word carried lethal promise. "Or I challenge your fitness to lead warriors. Let the people judge whether you still deserve respect." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A direct challenge to Grey Wolf's position was serious beyond mere insult. Sarah understood enough Apache custom to know this could end in blood. Grey Wolf smiled, but it was all teeth and no warmth. "You wish to challenge me? Pup. Then let it be done properly. Tomorrow at dawn. First blood or submission, unless your courage fades with the Morning Star." Running Eagle's jaw clenched. "Dawn, and when I win, the white woman faces justice." "When you lose," Grey Wolf corrected softly. "You will guard her wickiup for a moon to learn humility." "Agreed." The young warrior nodded sharply and stalked away, his supporters trailing behind. The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with excitement and speculation. Morning Star approached her husband. "This is what your softness brings. Discord, challenge, shame." Grey Wolf turned to her, and Sarah saw something flicker in his eyes, hurt, perhaps, or disappointment. "Would you prefer I let them torture an innocent woman to satisfy their bloodlust?" "Innocent," Morning Star laughed bitterly. "She bewitches you, and you call her innocent." "Enough." The word cut like a lash. "Support me or not, as you choose. But do not question my decisions before the people again." He strode away, leaving Morning Star standing alone. Her gaze found Sarah across the camp, promising retribution. That evening, Sarah couldn't eat. The coming fight pressed on her chest like stones. Rosa found her sitting outside her wickiup, watching the sun paint the mountains red. "You blame yourself," the Mexican woman observed. "Shouldn't I men will bleed tomorrow because of me?" Rosa settled beside her with a grunt. "Men will bleed tomorrow because young warriors are foolish and old wounds fester. You are just the excuse, not the cause." If I wasn't here. Then Running Eagle would find another reason to challenge. He hungers for glory, for position. Grey Wolf stands in his path. Rosa studied her shrewdly. But you worry less about the challenge and more about who might lose. No. Sarah couldn't deny it. The thought of Grey Wolf injured or killed made her stomach clench with fear that went beyond losing protection. He is a great warrior, Rosa continued. But Running Eagle is young, fast, hungry, and Grey Wolf. His heart is divided. Divided men sometimes fall. That night, Sarah lay sleepless. Every sound made her tense, wondering if Morningstar had sent someone to ensure she never saw the dawn challenge. But the night passed peacefully, if sleepless could be called peaceful. As gray light touched the eastern sky, the camp gathered in the ceremonial circle. Running Eagle waited, stripped to the waist despite the cold, his body painted for war. He carried a knife and war club, traditional weapons for honor combat. Grey Wolf emerged from his wickiup, similarly armed and painted. In the dim light, the scars mapping his torso told stories of survival Sarah was only beginning to understand. He moved with the controlled grace of a mountain cat, betraying no emotion. The camp elder, White Antelope, called out the rules. First blood from torso or head would end it, unless one yielded first. No interference, no second weapons, no mercy required but honor demanded. The warriors circled each other. Running Eagle attacked first, young muscles explosive with speed. His war club whistled through air where Grey Wolf's head had been a heartbeat before. The older warrior flowed aside, his counterstrike forcing Running Eagle back. They exchanged a flurry of blows, weapons clashing with sharp cracks that echoed off the canyon walls. Running Eagle's youth gave him speed and stamina. Grey Wolf had experience and patience, letting the younger man expend energy on fierce but fruitless attacks. Sarah watched with her heart in her throat. She saw what Rosa meant occasionally. Grey Wolf's attention flickered, his focus wavering for crucial instants. Whether checking on her or Morningstar, she couldn't tell, but Running Eagle nearly capitalized on one such moment, his knife missing Grey Wolf's ribs by a hair's breadth. The fight intensified. Both men bled from minor cuts, but nothing that would end the contest. Running Eagle grew frustrated, his attacks becoming wilder. Grey Wolf remained calm, deflecting and redirecting, wearing down his opponent. Then Running Eagle feinted left and struck right, his war club catching Grey Wolf's shoulder with a glancing blow that sent him stumbling. The young warrior pressed his advantage, knife flashing for the killing strike. Grey Wolf twisted impossibly, letting the blade pass along his ribs, drawing blood but avoiding the heart thrust. In the same motion, he brought his own knife up, the point stopping just as it dimpled the skin over Running Eagle's heart. "Yield," Grey Wolf commanded, breathing hard. Running Eagle's eyes blazed with fury and shame. For a moment, Sarah thought he would impale himself rather than surrender. Then his shoulders sagged. "I yield." Grey Wolf stepped back immediately, lowering his weapon. "You fought with courage. There is no shame in learning from defeat." But Running Eagle's face said otherwise, as White Antelope declared Grey Wolf the victor. The young warrior's gaze found Sarah. The hatred there made her shiver. As agreed, Grey Wolf announced to the crowd, "Running Eagle will guard the captive's wickiup for 1 moon. Let him learn that protecting the defenseless requires more strength than destroying them." The crowd dispersed slowly, discussing the fight in low voices. Sarah saw division in their faces. Some approved Grey Wolf's mercy. Others saw it as continued softness. Grey Wolf approached her, blood seeping from several cuts. Without thinking, Sarah reached toward his wounds. "You need tending." "No." He caught her hand before she could touch him, his grip gentle but firm. "Not from you. Not where all can see." The brief contact sent heat through her arm. She pulled back, face burning. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "This happened because of me." "This happened because it needed to happen. Running Eagle has challenged my decisions for moons. Better to settle it with honor than let it poison the band." He studied her face. You are unharmed. Yes, Morningstar didn't. She stopped, not wanting to cause more trouble. I know what my wife did and did not do. His expression hardened. She tests boundaries, but she is not foolish enough to act against you directly. Not yet. The qualification chilled Sarah. And when she does, then I will face another choice. He looked tired suddenly, older than his years. Each path forward seems to lead through thorns. That evening, Running Eagle took up his punishment post outside Sarah's wickiup. He sat rigid with wounded pride, refusing to acknowledge her attempts at kindness. She brought him water, food, a blanket against the cold. He touched nothing from her hands. I don't want to be your enemy, she said softly as darkness fell. He finally looked at her, and the depth of his antipathy made her step back. You are white. That makes you my enemy until the last Apache draws breath. Nothing changes that. Not his protection, not your pretty words, not this punishment. He smiled coldly. But I am patient. Grey Wolf cannot watch you forever. Morningstar's hatred grows. The band divides. Time favors me. Sarah retreated into her wickiup, barring the entrance with shaking hands. Outside, her unwilling guardian sat like a statue of resentment, a constant reminder that Grey Wolf's protection came at an ever-increasing cost. Through her smoke hole, she watched stars emerge in the clear desert sky. Somewhere in the camp, a woman sang a lullaby to her child. Normal life continued around the growing fractures in the band's unity. Tomorrow, she would rise and work and pretend not to notice the hostile stares increasing daily. She would avoid Grey Wolf's gaze and Morningstar's proximity. She would survive another day in this beautiful, terrible captivity that had become her world. But tonight, she allowed herself to admit the truth that made everything infinitely more complicated. She no longer wanted to leave. Not because she'd forgotten Thomas or forgiven his killers. Not because she'd become Apache. But because somewhere between that first terrifying morning and this moment, she'd begun to care for the scarred warrior who stood between her and destruction. Care in a way that justified every accusation, every suspicion, every challenge to his authority. The recognition terrified her more than all the threats combined, because caring made her vulnerable in ways that transcended physical danger. And in this world of warfare and ancient hatreds, vulnerability was a luxury even more dangerous than love. The spring moon brought renewed raids from both sides. Apache warriors returned with plunder and stories of settlements burned, while army patrols pressed deeper into the mountains. In this climate of escalating violence, Sarah's presence became even more contentious. She first noticed the change in how Grey Wolf looked at her. Where once his glances had been guarded, now they lingered with an intensity that made her breath catch. During the evening meals, she would feel his gaze and look up to find him watching openly, uncaring who noticed. Running Eagle's month of guard duty had ended, but the humiliation festered. He gathered followers among the younger warriors, their whispers poisoning the camp's harmony. Morningstar no longer bothered hiding her activities, meeting with other dissatisfied wives who shot dark looks at Sarah. The breaking point came on a warm night when the camp celebrated a successful raid. Drums echoed off canyon walls as warriors danced their victories. Sarah sat with the other captives, trying to remain invisible, but Grey Wolf approached through the firelight. "Dance with me," he said, extending his hand. The drums stopped. Every eye in the camp turned to them. Morningstar rose from her place among the women, her face a mask of fury. "I cannot," Sarah whispered. "You know I cannot." "I am asking." His hand remained extended, steady despite the weight of scandal in the gesture. Apache warriors did not dance with captives, certainly not publicly, certainly not when their wives watched. "Grey Wolf," White Antelope's voice carried across the silence. "This is not wise." Wisdom and desire rarely walk the same path. "Uncle." Grey Wolf's eyes never left Sarah's face. "I have been wise for many seasons. Tonight, I choose differently." Sarah saw the trap. Refusing would insult him before his people. Accepting would shatter what remained of camp stability. Either path led to disaster. Morning Star solved the dilemma by striding forward. If you must shame me, husband, at least have the courage to speak truth. Tell them all what we whisper in darkness. Wife. Tell them? Her voice cracked like a whip. Tell them how you speak her name in your sleep, how you count the steps between her wickiup and ours, how you would rather teach a white woman our sacred ways than lie with the mother of your children. The last revelation sent shockwaves through the crowd. Sarah hadn't known Grey Wolf had children, he'd never mentioned them, and she'd never seen them in camp. Where are these children? Morning Star. Grey Wolf's voice turned cold. Where are the sons and daughters you claim I neglect? Morning Star's composure cracked. Dead, both dead of the white man's sickness 2 winters past, but you knew that. You were there when we put them on the platforms. The pain in her voice was raw, bleeding. Sarah suddenly understood the depth of Morning Star's hatred. It wasn't just jealousy, but grief. The agony of a woman who had lost everything and now watched her husband turn to the enemy. I mourned them, Grey Wolf said quietly. I mourn them still. But grief cannot rule the living forever. No, then what rules you? Not honor, not duty, not the memory of your blood. Morning Star turned to address the crowd. See how the whites destroy us, not just with bullets, but with their very presence. They are a poison that weakens Apache hearts. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering. Sarah felt the mood shifting, becoming dangerous. Some of the warriors loosened knives in their sheaths. Enough, Grey Wolf's command silenced the crowd. Yes, I care for this woman. Yes, it brings dishonor to my wife, but I will not see her harmed for my failings. Your failings, Running Eagle pushed forward. You speak as if this is small thing. You betray everything, your wife, your people, your ancestors. For what? A pale woman who will never be Apache. She has learned our ways better in 1 season than you have in 20 summers. Grey Wolf shot back. She works without complaint, shares what she has, treats all with respect. Can you say the same? I am Apache, that is enough. Is it being born Apache makes you no more worthy than being born white makes her evil? Worth comes from choices, from actions. The philosophical argument was lost on many, but the elders exchanged meaningful looks. This went beyond simple infatuation. Grey Wolf was challenging fundamental beliefs about identity and belonging. Pretty words. Morning Star spat. But words do not change blood. Tell us, husband, if soldiers came tomorrow, would she warn us or welcome them? All eyes turned to Sarah. The question hung like a blade over her neck. Truth was dangerous, but lies would be worse. I don't know, she admitted quietly. They would be my people, but... She looked at the faces surrounding her hostile, curious, afraid. But this has become my life. You have become familiar. I would not want to see any of you harmed. Not want to see us harmed? Spotted Horse laughed bitterly. How generous! She would not dance on our graves. Truly, she is one of us now. Mock, if you will. Grey Wolf said. But how many of you would show such honesty? How many would admit uncertainty rather than speak easy lies? I would speak no lies. Morning Star declared, Here is truth, I go to my father's band. Any who tire of watching our war chief make fool of himself over white woman may come. The threat was clear division of the band, the ultimate disaster for a people who survived through unity. Several families looked uncertain, torn between loyalty and disgust. You would split our people over jealousy. Grey Wolf's control finally cracked. You would weaken us before our enemies for pride. I would save us from the weakness you bring. Morning Star's voice rose to near shriek. Choose, husband, her or us, your captive or your people. Choose now, before all witnesses. The ultimatum echoed in sudden silence. Sarah couldn't breathe. This was the moment she'd dreaded. The choice that would destroy lives regardless of the answer. Grey Wolf stood motionless for long heartbeats. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of mountains. "I choose duty." Relief and disappointment warred in Sarah's chest. Morningstar's triumph was short-lived. "I choose duty to the principles that make us Apache, protection of those under our care, honor in our dealings, courage to do what is right, not what is easy." He looked directly at his wife. "She stays under my protection. If that divides us, the fault lies not with her, but with those who value hatred over harmony." The camp erupted. Warriors shouted. Women wailed. Elders tried to restore order. In the chaos, Sarah felt a hand on her arm, Singing Crow, pulling her away from the volatile crowd. "Come, foolish girl. This is no place for you now." They retreated to Sarah's wickiup, where Rosa and the other captives had already gathered. Through the hide walls, they could hear the argument raging, voices raised in anger and anguish. "He has doomed himself," Rosa said quietly. "And perhaps all of us." Sarah pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to stop the tears. "I never wanted this, never asked for it." "The heart asks for nothing," Singing Crow said with unexpected gentleness. "It simply wants, and two hearts wanting across such divide, it brings only sorrow." Near dawn, the camp finally quieted. Sarah dozed fitfully, starting at every sound. When she emerged at first light, the camp looked different. Several wickiups stood empty families who had chosen to follow Morningstar to her father's band. Perhaps a third of the people, including many warriors. Grey Wolf stood at the camp's edge, watching the dust of their departure. His shoulders carried new weight. His face showed lines that hadn't existed yesterday. When he turned and saw Sarah, something passed between them, acknowledgement of what his choice had cost and what it meant. But he didn't approach, and she didn't speak. They had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The camp knew the consequences would unfold like blood in water, spreading until it touched everything. Running Eagle remained. She noticed. His followers too. They had chosen to stay not from loyalty, but from opportunity. In a weakened band, ambitious young warriors might find chances for advancement. "You should have let me go," Sarah said when Singing Crow brought her morning meal. "When Morningstar offered to arrange it, you should have let me go." The old woman studied her with knowing eyes. "Could you have left truly, knowing he would suffer for it?" Sarah had no answer. The heart wants what it wants, and hers had chosen the worst possible path, loving a man whose love for her might destroy everything he held dear. In the days that followed, the reduced band struggled to maintain normal life. But nothing felt normal with so many gone, with the constant tension of unspoken feelings and unfulfilled threats. Sarah worked harder than ever, trying to prove worthy of the chaos her presence caused. And at night, when the camp slept, she sometimes heard footsteps outside her wickiup, not threatening but protective. Grey Wolf, keeping watch over what he'd sacrificed so much to preserve. She never acknowledged his presence, never lifted the entrance flap to invite him in. That last boundary remained uncrossed, but knowing he was there brought comfort and torment, in equal measure the sweet ache of love that could never be, burning constant as the stars that watched over their impossible situation. The spring moon waned, and with it, any hope of simple solutions. They were locked in a dance now. Sarah and Grey Wolf and the fractured band, stepping to music that could only end in sorrow. But still they danced, because the alternative was to admit that sometimes love wasn't enough, that some divides were too wide to cross, that some stories had no happy endings. And that truth was harder to bear than all the danger and uncertainty combined. The summons came at dawn. White Antelope, eldest of the remaining elders, stood outside Sarah's wickiup with two warriors flanking him. His weathered face showed no emotion, but Sarah read judgment in the formal nature of his arrival. "The council meets when the sun reaches the center of the sky," he announced. "You will attend." It wasn't a request. Sarah nodded, her mouth dry with sudden fear. Since Morningstar's departure 2 weeks ago, The camp had simmered with unresolved tension. Now, it seemed, the elders would act. She spent the morning preparing, washing in the cold creek and donning the cleanest of her Apache clothing. Rosa helped her braid her hair properly, her hands gentle but her expression worried. "They will make him choose," Rosa said quietly. "Truly choose this time. No more words that dance around truth." When the sun stood overhead, Sarah walked to the council circle. The entire reduced band had gathered perhaps 60 people where once there had been 90. Grey Wolf sat with the warriors, his face carved from stone. Running Eagle smirked from his position among the younger men. White Antelope raised his staff for silence. "We gather to speak of harmony and discord, of tradition and change. Our band bleeds members like a wounded deer bleeds life. This cannot continue." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Sarah stood where directed, feeling every eye upon her. "Grey Wolf," White Antelope continued, "you have led our warriors with courage. Your protection has kept us safe through many dangers. But now you bring danger from within. Your attachment to the white woman divides us." "She has done nothing wrong," Grey Wolf said evenly. "Her existence here is wrong," Running Eagle burst out, then subsided at White Antelope's sharp look. "Let the young warrior speak," another elder, Broken Arrow, suggested. His words carry the feelings of many. Running Eagle stood, drawing himself up proudly. "This woman represents everything that destroys us, yet our war chief protects her, teaches her, looks at her with eyes that shame his marriage vows. Now Morning Star is gone, taking strong families with her. How many more must we lose?" "Would you have me murder a defenseless woman to appease anger?" Grey Wolf's voice remained controlled, but Sarah heard the edge beneath. "I would have you act like Apache." Running Eagle's passion blazed. "Send her to the Mexicans for ransom. Trade her to another band. Take her to the edge of white lands and release her. Anything but keep her here like a treasured wife, while your true wife walks in exile." The accusation hung heavy. Grey Wolf rose slowly, and Sarah saw warriors tense, but he merely walked to the center of the circle, addressing all. "I took this woman captive by rights of war, by our laws. She belongs to me to protect or punish, to keep or release. I have chosen protection. If this troubles you, the failing is mine, not hers." "Your failing destroys us," Broken Arrow said sadly. "Young families leave. Warriors question your judgment. Enemies will hear of our division and strike, all for a white woman who can never truly be one of us." "Cannot be." Grey Wolf turned to Sarah. "Show them what you have learned." Sarah's heart hammered, but she stepped forward. In careful Apache, she recited a traditional prayer Singing Crow had taught her, thanking the Earth Mother for sustenance and asking blessing on the people. Her pronunciation wasn't perfect, but the words came from memory and heart. Some faces showed surprise, even grudging approval, but Running Eagle spat in disgust. "A parrot can repeat words. That doesn't make it an eagle. Yet she works beside our women, learns our ways, respects our customs." Grey Wolf countered, "How is this different from my grandmother, taken from Mexico, who became fully Apache?" "Your grandmother didn't arrive with hands bloody from Apache deaths," someone called out. "Neither did she." Grey Wolf's control finally cracked. "She was a farmer's wife who never held a weapon until the day we took her. You blame her for all white crimes while she grieves her own losses. Where is Apache justice in that?" White Antelope struck his staff against the ground. "Enough. We circle like buzzards while the meat of the matter sits untouched. Grey Wolf, the band requires harmony. Your protection of this woman breaks that harmony. What solution do you offer?" The crucial moment had arrived. Sarah watched Grey Wolf's face, seeing the war between duty and desire play out in subtle tensions. "I offer truth," he said finally. "Yes, I care for her beyond what is proper. Yes, this divides us, but sending her away solves nothing if the division remains in our hearts." "Then what do you propose?" Broken Arrow asked. Grey Wolf was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words fell like stones into still water. "Let her choose. Give her a horse, supplies, safe passage to the nearest settlement. If she goes, I will accept it and speak no more of her. If she stays," he paused, meeting the eyes of each elder in turn. "If she stays, knowing the cost, then accept that the spirits have woven our paths together for reasons beyond our understanding." The council erupted. Warriors shouted, women argued, elders tried to restore order. Through it all, Sarah stood frozen. The choice she dreaded was being placed in her hands not just between captivity and freedom, but between Grey Wolf's happiness and his people's unity. "Silence," White Antelope's command cut through the chaos. "The proposal has merit, though it pains me. Woman, you have heard. What say you?" Every eye turned to Sarah. She could barely breathe past the weight of decision. To leave meant safety. Return to her own people, escape from this impossible situation. To stay meant accepting responsibility for the band's division, choosing love over the welfare of many. Her voice cracked. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I need time to consider. This choice affects more than just myself." Sunset. White Antelope declared, "You have until sunset to decide. The band will gather then to hear your choice." The council dispersed slowly, people breaking into small groups to discuss this unprecedented situation. Grey Wolf approached Sarah, but Running Eagle stepped between them. "No," the young warrior said firmly. "You have influenced her enough. Let her decide without your shadow." For a moment, violence crackled in the air. Then Grey Wolf nodded and walked away without a word. Sarah was left standing alone as the camp swirled with activity around her. She retreated to her wickiup, but found no peace there. Through the afternoon, people passed by, some shouting that she should leave, others silent in their judgment. Singing Crow brought her water but offered no advice, her weathered face carefully neutral. As shadows lengthened, Sarah emerged and walked to the creek. She needed clarity, but her thoughts tangled like thorns. How could she choose between her own heart and the welfare of people who, despite everything, had become familiar to her? Some had shown kindness. All were just trying to survive in a world that offered no easy answers. At the creek, she found Grey Wolf waiting. They stood on opposite banks, water flowing between them like all the barriers that separated their worlds. "I should not have come," he said. "No," she agreed, "but I'm glad you did." They stood in silence, letting the creek speak for them. "Finally," Grey Wolf said, "whatever you choose, know that meeting you has changed me, opened my eyes to possibilities I never imagined. That gift remains, regardless. And if I stay, can you bear being the chief who chose a white woman over his people's peace?" His smile was sad and beautiful. "Can you bear being the woman who stayed, knowing the cost?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I truly don't know." The sun touched the western peaks. Time had run out. They walked back separately. Approaching the council circle from different directions, the entire band had gathered, faces tense with anticipation. White Antelope called for silence. "Sarah Mackenzie, the choice is yours. Stay or go. Whatever you decide, it will be honored." Sarah stood in the center of the circle, feeling the weight of every gaze. She thought of Thomas, of her burned homestead, of the life torn away. She thought of Grey Wolf's kindness, of skills learned and bonds formed despite impossible circumstances. She thought of Morningstar's justified rage and Running Eagle's valid fears. In the end, the choice came down to a simple truth. Love was not enough if it destroyed everything around it. Her voice rang clear in the desert air. "I choose." The camp held its breath. Grey Wolf's face remained stoic, but she saw his hands clench. Running Eagle leaned forward eagerly. Singing Crow watched with ancient eyes that had seen too much sorrow. "I choose to honor the needs of the many over the desires of the few. If my presence continues to divide this band, Then I will go. But I ask one condition. Speak, White Antelope commanded. Give me 3 days to prepare. Let me say proper farewells to those who showed kindness. Let me finish the work I've started. Then I will leave peacefully, with gratitude for the protection given and sorrow for the pain caused. The silence stretched taut. Then White Antelope nodded slowly. It is fair. 3 days. Then you go with our blessing and safe passage. The council dispersed quietly. Some faces showed relief, others sadness. Running Eagle looked triumphant. Grey Wolf. Grey Wolf turned and walked into the darkness without a word, his shoulders rigid with control. Sarah returned to her wickiup and finally allowed the tears to fall. She had made the right choice, the only choice that offered hope for healing. But right and easy were different things, and her heart broke with each beat. 3 days. 3 days to say goodbye to a life she'd never wanted but had somehow come to cherish. 3 days to prepare for a freedom that felt like loss. 3 days to love a man she could never have, storing up memories to warm the cold years ahead. Outside, the camp settled into uneasy quiet. The choice was made. The path was set. All that remained was to walk it with whatever grace she could manage, carrying the weight of necessary sorrow. The third dawn arrived, wrapped in mist, the high desert air carrying the scent of rain. Sarah stood outside her wickiup for the last time, watching the camp stir to life. Everything looked sharper somehow, etched with the clarity that comes before goodbye. Grey Wolf had not spoken to her since the council. She'd caught glimpses of him checking weapons, instructing warriors, maintaining the facade of normal leadership. But he moved like a man carved from winter, all warmth withdrawn into some unreachable place. Singing Crow approached with a bundle. "For your journey," the old woman said gruffly. "Dried meat, pine nuts, medicine plants. The desert is harsh to those who travel alone." "Thank you," Sarah whispered, touched by this unexpected kindness. "Bah, thank me by surviving. Too much sorrow already in this world." But Singing Crow's eyes were suspiciously bright as she turned away. The morning passed in a blur of final preparations. Sarah returned borrowed items, finished the half-woven basket she'd started, and said quiet farewells to those who would accept them. Some turned away, but others pressed small gifts into her hands, a carved bone needle, a pouch of salt, things practical and precious. At midday, horses thundered into camp, scouts, riding hard with news that changed everything. "Soldiers," the lead rider gasped. 2 days north. Many soldiers with Apache scouts from the reservation. They seek our camp." The peaceful morning shattered. Warriors grabbed weapons while women began packing essentials. In minutes, the camp transformed from home to war party. White Antelope called an emergency council. "We must move deeper into the mountains, the old hiding places." "The woman," Running Eagle said immediately. "She knows our location, our numbers. If she leaves now—" "I would never betray you," Sarah protested. "Your word means nothing." Running Eagle spat. "You are white, they are white. Blood calls to blood." Grey Wolf finally spoke, his voice cutting through the arguments. "She stays until we reach safety. Then she goes. I will not have her captured by soldiers who might force information from her. Or she could guide them right to us," Spotted Horse suggested darkly. "Enough." White Antelope's authority silenced the brewing fight. "We have no time for this. Pack light, move fast. The woman rides with us until we reach Crying Woman Canyon. Then she takes her freedom." The camp exploded into organized chaos. Wickiups came down with practiced efficiency. Goods sorted into essential and abandoned. Sarah found herself swept into the evacuation. Her departure transformed from ceremonial farewell to desperate flight. They rode through the afternoon into terrain that grew progressively wilder. Sarah on her promised horse, surrounded by warriors who watched her with mixtures of suspicion and resignation. Grey Wolf led a scouting party ahead, leaving her under Running Eagle's hostile guard. As shadows lengthened, they climbed a narrow trail between towering red rocks. The horses picked their way carefully while children whimpered and were hushed by worried mothers. Behind them, dust clouds suggested pursuit, though still distant. Near sunset, they reached Crying Woman Canyon, a deep gash in the earth with multiple exits and defensive positions. The band poured in like water, finding its level, immediately establishing temporary shelters. White Antelope approached Sarah where she sat apart. "It is time. That trail leads northwest to Fort Buchanan. 2 days' ride, they will send you to Tucson. Then back to your people." Sarah nodded, throat too tight for words. This wasn't how she'd imagined leaving in flight and fear rather than dignified departure. "Wait!" Grey Wolf appeared from the shadows. His face remained stone, but his eyes burned with everything unsaid. "I will guide her to the trail's end, ensure no one follows." "No!" Running Eagle stepped forward. "You've compromised enough for her. Send others." "I send no one. I go myself, or she doesn't leave." The challenge in Grey Wolf's voice brooked no argument. 1 hour. Then I return to lead our defense." White Antelope looked between them, understanding all too well. 1 hour, no more." They rode in silence, picking their way down the treacherous trail by moonlight. Sarah wanted to speak, to say something meaningful, but words felt inadequate. Grey Wolf led with sure knowledge, finding paths invisible to her eyes. At a plateau where the trail forked, he stopped. "This way leads to the fort, that way to Mexico. Choose." "You know my choice. The fort, then home to whatever remains of my world." "Is it still your world?" He turned in his saddle to face her fully. "After everything—" "I don't know where I belong anymore," she admitted. "But I know where I don't belong. Your people need you whole, not divided. Morning Star deserves a husband who looks at her, not through her, and I need to find who I am when I'm not the woman who destroyed an Apache band." "You destroyed nothing. We destroy ourselves with hatred and rigid thinking. You merely revealed fractures already present." He moved his horse closer. "But you are right. My duty lies with them. Your freedom lies elsewhere. Will you reconcile with Morning Star?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Perhaps time heals some wounds. Or perhaps I will walk alone, carrying the memory of what could have been." He reached into his pouch, withdrawing something that caught moonlight. "Take this." It was a small carved stone, a wolf running beneath stars. The craftsmanship was exquisite, each detail perfect despite its tiny size. "I cannot—" "You can. You must, so that years from now, when this seems like a dream, you will have proof it was real." He pressed it into her palm, his fingers lingering against hers. "Proof that you were loved, even if that love could find no home in this world." The tears came then, silent and unstoppable. "Grey Wolf." "Go," he said softly. "Go before I forget every vow I've made and carry you into the mountains where none would find us. Go while I still have strength to let you." She wanted to kiss him, just once, to know the taste of what might have been, but that would break the last wall between them, and neither would survive the flood. Instead, she clutched the carved wolf and turned her horse toward the fort trail. "Thank you, for everything, for showing me strength I didn't know I had, for teaching me that enemies are just people seen from different angles. For—" her voice broke. "Sarah." Her name on his lips was prayer and plea combined. "Live well. Find happiness. Let this pain transform into something bearable. That is how you honor what we could not have." She nodded, not trusting speech, and urged her horse forward. At the trail's bend, she looked back. He sat motionless in moonlight, watching her go. She raised her hand once in farewell. He mirrored the gesture. Then the trail turned, and he was gone. Sarah rode through the night, tears drying on her cheeks. The carved wolf clutched so tightly it left marks on her palm. Behind her, The Apache band would flee deeper into the mountains, pursued by soldiers in an endless cycle of violence. Gray Wolf would lead them, protect them, perhaps die for them. Morning Star might return, might forgive, might help heal the wounds Sarah's presence had opened. Or perhaps not. Perhaps some breaks couldn't be mended. Some choices echo forever. At dawn, Fort Buchanan appeared through the desert haze. Sarah stopped at a rise, looking back toward the mountains that had become her world. Somewhere in those peaks and canyons, a man she could never have was facing dangers she could no longer share. She touched the carved wolf once more, then tucked it safely away and rode toward the fort, toward questions and explanations, toward whatever remained of Sarah Mackenzie after months of being something else entirely. The soldiers at the gate stared in shock at the white woman in Apache dress, speaking accented English, carrying the marks of captivity and transformation. But Sarah barely noticed their reactions. Part of her remained in those mountains, would always remain there, caught between two worlds like morning mist. They took her in, these men of her own kind who seemed suddenly foreign. They offered food she could barely taste, asked questions she answered mechanically, made plans to send her home that felt like arrangements for a stranger. That night, in a proper bed that felt too soft, Sarah held the carved wolf and remembered amber eyes that saw too much, remembered hands gentle despite their strength, remembered a love that bloomed in impossible ground and was all the more precious for its brevity. In the morning, she would begin the journey back to civilization. She would rebuild some kind of life, carry some kind of future. But tonight, she grieved for what was lost and celebrated what was found, the knowledge that even in captivity, even across the vast divide of culture and conflict, two hearts had recognized each other. It would have to be enough. In a world torn by hatred and misunderstanding, perhaps such moments of connection were all anyone could hope for. Brief touches of grace in the midst of sorrow, proving that love could exist even where it could not live. Sarah closed her eyes and let sleep take her, the carved wolf warm in her palm. Gray Wolf's voice echoing in memory, live well, find happiness. She would try, for him, for herself, for the unlikely love that had changed them both forever. She would try. Thank you for listening to this story from the Wild West. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect across the miles. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel and share your thoughts about Sarah and Gray Wolf's impossible love. What would you have chosen in her place? Let me know in the comments.